The Ashanti Empire, the kingdom that refused to kneel. They called them savages, but when the British came for the Ashanti, they found warriors. This was no ordinary kingdom. It was an empire built on power, gold, and unbreakable unity. The British believed they could take it. They were wrong. For nearly a century, the Ashanti did the impossible. They stood against the greatest empire the world had ever seen and won. But history has a way of hiding its biggest embarrassments. The world was never meant to remember this war. But today, we're bringing the truth back to light. Long before the British ever set foot on Ashanti land, the empire was already a force to be reckoned with. Gold was the lifeblood of the Ashanti. The land was rich with it, and where there is gold, there is power. The Ashanti didn't just rule with weapons, they ruled with unity. At the heart of their empire sat the golden stool, not just a throne, but the very soul of their people. It was said that as long as the stool remained untouched, the Ashanti would never fall. And for over a century, that belief would be tested in ways no one could imagine. The British weren't just after land, they were after control, and nothing represented wealth like the Ashanti's gold-rich empire. At first, they came as traders, but trade was never enough. The British wanted domination. The Ashanti's answer? No. And so, the first shots of war were fired. The British thought they had the upper hand. They had cannons, guns, and discipline. But what they didn't have was the Ashanti's knowledge of the land. The Ashanti didn't fight like the British. They fought like ghosts, appearing, striking, vanishing. The British line crumbled. For the first time, the mighty British army faced something they weren't prepared for: defeat. Humiliated, the British refused to accept defeat. If they couldn't break the Ashanti in battle, they would burn their world to the ground. The war wasn't just fought with weapons. It was fought with destruction. The Ashanti capital, Kumasi, was reduced to ashes. The British thought they had won, but they didn't realize the Ashanti were far from finished. And then she rose, the woman who would shake an empire. The British thought they had broken the Ashanti, but what they didn't know was that their greatest challenge was still to come. The great Ashanti capital had been reduced to ashes. The British believed they had won, that the mighty Ashanti Empire had finally fallen. And at the center of it all stood one woman, a queen, a warrior, a legend, Yaa Asantewaa. But what they didn't know was that their greatest battle had, with the capital destroyed and their king exiled, the Ashanti were leaderless, broken, defeated. The British demanded their final prize, the golden stool, the soul of the Ashanti people. The British had already taken their land, their king, their homes, but now they wanted something far greater: the very heart of the Ashanti people. And then she spoke. Yaa Asantewaa was no ordinary woman. She was a queen mother, a guardian of tradition. And when she saw her people hesitate, she did what no one else dared to do. How can you, men of Ashanti, sit here like cowards while our enemies take everything from us? If you, the men, will not fight, then we, the women, will. In that moment, something changed. The spirit of resistance had been reignited, and so began the war the British never expected, the War of the Golden Stool. Under Yaa Asantewaa's leadership, the Ashanti would launch one of the most daring resistance movements in history. It was no longer just about land. It was about survival. It was about dignity. The British expected an easy victory. After all, what could an army led by a woman possibly do? But Yaa Asantewaa had turned the forests into a battlefield. The British were walking into a trap. The Ashanti knew the land better than anyone, and Yaa Asantewaa knew how to use that to her advantage. The British, for all their firepower, could not easily defeat an enemy that fought like shadows. We are hunted. She fights with a force I have never seen before. This is no ordinary war. The Ashanti had spent months weakening the British forces. Now, it was time for their boldest move yet. Under the cover of darkness, they struck. For the first time in British colonial history, an African woman was leading a full-scale siege against them. The British were trapped. Their supplies were running low, their reinforcements too far away. The unthinkable was happening. For months, the Ashanti held their ground. The British had vastly underestimated them, but empires do not fall easily. The British had seen enough. They sent an overwhelming force to crush the rebellion once and for all. Even the fiercest warriors can only fight for so long. Yaa Asantewaa and her last fighters were surrounded. Yaa Asantewaa was captured, but even in chains, she never bowed. The British had won the battle, but they had not broken the Ashanti spirit. Though she was exiled, her name became legend. Though they tried to erase her, her spirit remained. Yaa Asantewaa was more than a warrior. She was a symbol, and symbols never die. The Ashanti would rise again, and the war for freedom, it was far from over. The Ashanti had fought with everything they had. They had defied one of the most powerful empires in the world. But as British reinforcements poured in, a brutal reality set in. The final stand was here. Outnumbered, outgunned, their queen exiled, the Ashanti's fate hung by a thread. But even in the face of destruction, they refused to kneel. With their capital burned and their queen gone, the Ashanti had one choice left: fight to the end, or lose everything. We do not fight for land. We do not fight for kings. We fight for our ancestors, for our children. We fight for the soul of Ashanti, said the Ashanti's general. They say the Ashanti are finished, that soon they will beg for mercy. But something tells me they are not done yet. A young British soldier speaking to himself as he writes on his journal, the Ashanti knew the land better than anyone. They became the shadows, the wind, the very earth itself. This was not just a battle. It was a message. The Ashanti were not defeated. They were waiting. British general frustrated. Why won't they just surrender? This was it, the last stand. The Ashanti gathered, side by side. Brothers, sisters, elders, even the wounded stood ready, because surrender was never an option. They fought like warriors. They fought like legends, but even legends have limits. After years of war, the Ashanti resistance was finally crushed. The British had won. The Ashanti Kingdom was forced into submission. But victory is not always what it seems. The British won the war, but at what cost? Thousands of their soldiers had fallen. The war that was supposed to be easy had drained their resources, tested their might, and shattered their illusions of invincibility. And the Ashanti, they had lost their land, their queen, their independence, but not their spirit. They tried to erase us, but we are still here. The British thought they had ended the Ashanti resistance, but some things cannot be destroyed. Today, the Ashanti remain one of the most powerful ethnic groups in Ghana. Their history is taught, their warriors remembered, and Yaa Asantewaa, she is a national hero. Empires rise and fall, but the spirit of a people, that lasts forever. This was just one of many wars they tried to erase, one of many stories buried beneath the weight of colonial history. But what if I told you this was only the beginning?